first one assumes that we would get an additional $3 million in state funds. You can see it makes a little bit of difference in the impact. The next scenario, 10, 11, and 12, really brings it down to about $7 million of additional funds, which I think is certainly something that can be accomplished in the next year or two. That brings the tax impact down to about 6.5 cents, between 10 and 6 pennies that would be added to the tax roll. So having said that, a couple things I'll point out. We looked at current rates today. If we could issue bonds today. 20-year AAA rate is 1.5%. An insured rate is 1.9%. Yes, sir.
That's at a AAA rating. What happens to that number when that rating falls?
That would be an insured rate, which is 1.9%.
If it's a AAA bond, I'm saying if it went to sale and it didn't go as AAA.
Oh, but you're going to want to do an insured bond. I'd say I don't think the county would be able to apply for a AAA bond because you don't have, we went through this back in March with Mr. Cheatwood talking about the county's bond rating and that sort of thing. And in this particular case, we would probably recommend, and LGC would recommend, an insured bond. And you would have to buy the insurance on that. The rate for an insured bond is 1.9% right now.
Okay. So that's another almost 0.5% over what you're showing there right now.
No, it's on the board right there. See the second line down, the insured rate. And again, we have the information's right there in front of you in your pack. One of my clients just sold 2 weeks ago $29.5 million bond referendum for 15-year at 1.2%. So rates are extremely competitive. They are going down actually every day, and so where they'll be in November is anybody's guess. We did contact USDA to see what their rates were. If there was any question about that, their direct loan rate is 2.3%. They also have a USDA guaranteed program that's a bank determined rate. I have in your packet provided you some information that looks like this. That came directly from USDA, and it has some information on both of those programs. The point that I wanted to make is that the numbers that were used by Mr. Cheatwood in the tax impact scenarios in the 12 different scenarios was very conservative. And so if we were able to go to market today, we would probably be looking at a pretty significant decrease in the tax impact. So I guess the moral of that story would be the sooner we could get to market, the better it would be. So having worked through with Mr. Cheatwood a couple weeks ago and really thinking about what we would want to target as a project budget, could we get to 45 million? And so even though this is not something that I think the board needs to spend much time talking about tonight, because there are a number of different options on what we could do to do that, we have listed some of the options that would get this project down to 45,304,000. We could perhaps eliminate the board added contingency. We could use the auditorium as a future project, and that's a pretty substantial reduction. If you did that, you might want to add back the auxiliary gym, so I would even add some of the things that we've already previously reduced. We're currently carrying about a $2 million owner contingency in the budget. We could reduce that to $1 million, and that would bring us down to a $45,300,000 project budget. Again, not that we're asking you to make those decisions tonight, but we're showing you that we could achieve that $45 million budget, which would require, under current number is about $33 million of additional funds for the project. And this is a project that our design team has worked on. You can see this photo of a kitchen cafeteria. It also has a stage incorporated with it. And when you want to use it as a auditorium or the seminar area, you can move the tables, pull out the stadium seating, and still have on-floor seating. And so you now have a multi-use space. And so we've got a lot of those kind of ideas that we can incorporate into the design once we get started. So, you know, there are a lot of ways to skin a cat. And so again, if we have additional state funds that come in as the project's proceeding, we can add back these portions of the project that we need in order to get the budget down to set an amount for a bond referendum. So, you know, I get asked the question, you know, what happens if we delay? What's the issues that we need to concern ourselves? You know, it's always easy to kick the can down the road, but sometimes the end of the road is not very pleasant. One of my concerns about this particular project is the potential loss of your grant funds. Now, that's a huge difference for this county and for the taxpayers if we can take advantage of it. In the absence of either bond funds or borrowed money in order to provide the match, then you can't take that money down without having to raise taxes in the county to do that. And I don't think that, you know, that's probably the most egregious way to do that match, because you would be looking at a 25-cent increase if you had to raise taxes one year just to take down that 12.3 million in grant money. So again, doing that over a period of time through a bond referendum or some sort of loan certainly makes sense. We do not want to let those grant funds go by the wayside. Construction escalation is roughly 4 to 6% annually. If you use the 4% number, the lowest, you're looking at about a $4 million project cost for a 2-year delay. I can tell you, the last 2 months, I was kind of concerned about how this virus would impact capital construction projects and that sort of thing. We've probably been busier in the last 30 days putting out proposals of folks that are trying to take advantage of these low interest rates right now. And so if anything, I think the market is probably going to get higher in capital construction projects. And certainly we are seeing that from some of the states and counties. Interest rates is probably the one thing right now that makes this project really, the stars align for doing this project today for the taxpayers of Cameron County. They're historically low. In fact, of the 40 years I've been doing this kind of work, I've never had the opportunity to work in conditions this low. I built thousands of schools at 6 and 7% interest rates. The difference that a 2% or 1.5% bond makes is just incredible to the overall repayment for capital projects. So now is the time. If you add just 1% back on the interest rate, and this is important and you're looking at the tax impact, it's about $4.4 million that the taxpayers would have to repay. If you add just 2 points, again, that's about $9 million overall that the taxpayers would have to repay. A significant amount of money, so you take advantage of interest rates. I mentioned the fact that there is a real push going on right now to get a number of infrastructure projects, quote, shovel ready to take advantage of the low rates and some of the federal infrastructure money that is being contemplated. It's not just New York, it's every state, including this state and other southeastern states that we are currently working with right now that are trying to get their projects in line for these funds. The state of North Carolina is no different. They're looking at contemplating a statewide bond referendum, putting it on the ballot for this November. It's bipartisan support. It would be for $3.1 billion, of which $800 million of that would be for K-12 schools, which we are looking to get some of those monies to supplement this particular project. So what's the next steps? Again, it's about a 45-day process. I know you can't see it, but if you'll look, I have provided a sample schedule that the commissioners would need to implement with our assistance and Ms. Bowman's assistance. There are 3 readings that need to take place by the commission in order to place the question on the ballot in November. The first reading, which would be at your meeting on Monday, a second reading at your first meeting in July. There would need to be at least one special call meeting in which a public hearing would take place to receive public comment. There are also some notices that have to be filed in the newspaper, and those timely notices are things that, again, we would need to get in place working with your bond counsel and your financial advisors. You don't make a final decision until your third reading as to whether or not it goes on the ballot or the actual amount. And so you really are running down that path of making sure you have that option available to you by starting that process. And so when you start thinking about the next generation of students and, you know, everybody that serves the public in a position as you do, leadership position in a county, you look to see what your legacy will be. Every generation that comes to a community, again, is thinking about what contributions they will make to a community. Couple things I'll point out about this particular project. There will be new opportunities for the students. One of the things that we tried to do is a lot of the shortcomings that you are just unable to provide the students in this building, you will be able to accommodate in a new facility. I can tell you that a new high school in any community is basically the first thing any economic development people that are coming to a community want to see is show us your schools, show us your buildings. Historically low interest rates. I don't think we're ever going to see anything like we are seeing today in your ability to borrow money at the rates we're seeing today. We have at least $12.3 million in state grants that will offset the cost of this project for the taxpayers. We do not want to lose that. We need supplemental funds in order to be able to match those grants together. Further delays increases escalation costs. We certainly, the sooner we can get in the ground, the better. One of the things we don't think about is the economic impact of creating 100 new jobs here in Camden County during the construction of this project. At the peak, we would probably be around 200 jobs, but the average would be approximately 100 jobs for an 18-month period. Increase economic business for the folks that are here. Every school will benefit from the construction of the high school because of the way you're going to be shifting students. You're going to build capacity at your middle grade levels, at your elementary grade levels, and at your primary grade levels. And currently, you are at or over capacity in every one of those buildings right now. And ultimately, you know, having good schools really is the basic foundation of any great community. And so this really sets the Camden County community really to be in a good place for the next 30 to 40 to 50 years. So with that, I'll be able to answer any questions or try to answer any questions you might have.
Anyone have any questions? Thank you, Judge.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I did, if you don't mind, I'd like to give kind of a ground level perspective here, based on some information that I received. So I'll just go. What's that? He's going up there. There's a podium, there's no mic.
Yeah.
There's no mic up there.
All right, I appreciate the opportunity to just talk for a few minutes. And I'm going to put on a different hat tonight, and it's the budget officer hat for the county, and not the county manager hat. So as the budget officer for Camden County, it's my responsibility to advise the leadership when financial situations develop that impact the county, the community, and the citizens, or what would impact the community and the citizens of the county. So that being said, I've been involved with financing many projects within the last few years that have impacted the operation of the budget. And I know y'all remember some of them. One of them was a lagoon liner that went bad. That was over $1 million, which came out to be estimated first about $225,000. So that one kind of went over the top. This year, I just completed the 2020-21 budget. It'll be presented to the Board of Commissioners at their June 1st meeting for public hearing and approval. The budget this year was increased over last year by $200,000 to a total of $13.5 million. The current tax rate is 75 cents, which generates approximately $100,000 per 1 cent of tax revenue for the county. My recommendation this year to the Board of Commissioners is to fund the budget as presented without a tax increase. Over the past, and that's with no layoffs, no furloughs, no additional anything. Everything is pretty much flat. Over the past few months, we have been very busy working with the superintendent and MB Mr. Rod here, on the prospects of building a new high school. To say the least, and for me, this has been an education. It's been very challenging, especially working with the local government commission, bond council, and the financial advisors for the county based on the current recommendation from the school board to build a school in the amount of $49.3 million. And I started on this immediately after this came to light and was put in the paper the next day. So the school has a $12.3 million grant, which you all know about, which can be applied toward the construction of the school, which will reduce the amount to borrow to approximately $37 million. And that's using that first scenario there. I've had multiple discussions with the folks with the local government commission, bond council, and the financial advisor, First Triumph, to get their insights and guidance on how to proceed with financing this project. It should be noted that the $10 million that was in last year's state budget, which we've all heard about now, is most likely not available to the coronavirus impact in the state. And last year, they put $1.5 billion in that budget, of which Governor Cooper did not sign off on. He actually vetoed that. So that money, as it stands right now, is not available. Based on a 20-year loan with a maximum annual debt service of $2.9 million, which Rick just went over here, the projected tax increase to the citizens to finance this project is estimated at an additional 18.5 cents more, bringing the total tax bill to 93.5 cents for $100 of the assessed property value. So an example of this is the current tax rate, let's say for a $200,000 home, is $1,500 per year. The tax rate for the same house would increase to $1,870 per year, for an increase of $370 a year over a 20-year period. After speaking with the local government commission, we were advised, based on the county the size of Camden, the ability to service this debt is excessive. And they compare us to Gates County and DeKalb County, which they have intimate workings with them because they went out and tried to build a brand new high school also. So funding at this rate leaves no room for any added increases over the next 20 years, such as infrastructure, utilities, buildings, upgrades, vehicles, the sheriff's office, which is the second largest department for the county budget. They're almost $2 million now. et cetera, because the county will have limited ability to raise taxes to pay for these items, which is not a realistic approach to future planning. Although building a new high school would be the optimal choice, the proposed cost could place the county in a challenging situation for future years. I would recommend a committee, and I mentioned this last year, if you all remember, the committee to be organized as soon as possible with representatives from both boards to look at options to meet the needs and lower the cost. And that's all I have. That being said, I'll take any questions if you've got. But I think this
You did take the worst, absolute worst case scenario, and I agree, 18 cents is too much.
I took the first one that was proposed, so, and that's the one that was discussed too.
But like the ones he gave us, that, 30 years, that we compromise between the 40 and the 20, that drops all the way to 11. And I think, that's more doable, and then Rick proposed maybe we can back it to the 45, and that drops it to 10.
There's projections on 3% interest rate, which we got verified information from the USDA and whoever else you contacted yesterday, 1.5 to 2. And I don't know about you, where I come from, 1% on $33 million is a huge difference in the amount of payout. So
I know where I come from because I put this together here.
right, I'm not knocking. Let's not get testy about it. I'm saying to me, 1% is a huge swing. So we're talking 18.5 cents per on the tax rate here. But if we reduce that by 1% and rework the numbers to see what that would actually be.
Plus, if you shifted the other financing options, and we know this county can do the 10 cent because we've done it before. We did CIS with a 10 cent bond referendum in the past, and we were able to.
Okay, yeah. We haven't finished.
Huh?
Never finished the.
I know we haven't.
You got $8 million, you still owe $8 million.
Well, I know that, but I'm saying the county was able to absorb that debt service. We are paying that payment. We haven't missed a payment,
Yeah, until 2043.
but we've never missed a payment. I'm just saying the county was able to do that 10 cent. And
We
we're
haven't
fine.
paid $1 yet on the principal of that loan.
Well, I mean, I didn't have anything to do with the terms. I don't know.
I understand, I'm just telling you.
But I'm just saying that at 10 cent, it was something the county was able.
The LGC was not recommending going for a year. I can just tell you that.
Well, I mean, I don't doubt that.
I don't think any of us would look at a 4 year either, but there are options besides
Well, the
20. There's
30.
25 and the 30 in between that is possible.
There are quite a few options, Chris,
Absolutely they are.
and some of it starts with the beginning.
Which beginning are we discussing?
The beginning of the proposed project.
Okay.
Does the proposed project have to be all brand new, or should we look at some other ways of meeting the needs of the schools?
That could be a possibility.
Yeah, it could be, but we haven't, wait a minute, but we haven't explored any of that.
We did a study.
Who did?
Y'all had us pay any cost.
Chair.
Y'all were at the meeting.
Okay, it hasn't been presented to the board.
Yeah.
I don't know where you are.
He did not present you the
Last
study
year.
that you requested us to pay half of to have done, and his recommendation was we needed a new high school.
He's talking about other alternatives.
That was
The study.
There was all.
Y'all asked for the study, and the study's recommendation was we needed a new high school.
There were other alternatives in this.
There were other alternatives in the study as well.
On that study, because, we weren't part of that study either. We were requesting to be paid a check. Was anybody on the board on that committee? I like the idea of having.
None of us were on it either.
The community.
We weren't on it either. But we sat and he presented it to us. We all agreed.
We weren't on
that the
it.
new high school was.
No, we weren't on the committee either. He did the study. As a matter of fact, it was his company that your board recommended we use for that study.
Yeah, we went with what y'all said.
When
So-
it comes down to it, right now, it's late to basically clear it off because we got coronavirus right now, and we don't know if we can pay our bills. We can take it lightly, but there's no more money involved. And we gotta come up with all this money on our own. And personally, I'm not too keen on running 10 cents to whatever it may be to the taxpayer. I'm not too keen on that. If there was some more money available.
You're not pushing
I'd be
it.
okay with that.
It's an
And we're not
option.
asking y'all to say it's okay, we're asking to put it on a bond referendum to ask the voters, the citizens of Camden County, which includes all of us, whether it's okay.
Yeah, it's a public decision. It's not, we're not making y'all force it.
Nobody wants to raise taxes, but back to the point of the CIS
But we don't
payment.
have it.
Absolutely, it'll have to. We don't have $40 million laying around this town. Y'all are very good with the money and keeping, our reserves up, and that's great. Nobody's got 40 million. But back to CIS and the 40-year term, that should show something that in 2003, we needed to construct a new school because we were over capacity. And now 16, 17 years later, we're already back over capacity. There's a continuing theme here. We're growing and something's got to give.
Unless y'all stop building. I mean, I know
You
Ken
can't
and
do
Blaine
that.
Basin
There's no,
called me last
you
week.
can't, we know you can't just put a moratorium so you can't build.
County of lawsuit.
Yeah, that's what we know, we understand
We
it's not
understand
legit.
that. You can't stop.
Either go pay your lawyers or.
Yeah, I mean, we know
Well,
that's
we're in the
not a
same boat
viable
as you. You
option,
can't
but
stop
we
it.
can't, we can't stop it, and we can't stop kids from growing and still getting
Got
big.
approved, so.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I understand the position you're in, but that's the position we're in. We have to keep taking these kids. And as he said,
We don't
every
have
single
anywhere
one,
to put
we don't have nowhere to put them.
We don't even know if we'll be back at school next year.
I
Our
mean,
parents are very, very, very particular on the kids right now, because we homeschool and everything else, going to a different school.
Well,
We
we're
don't
not
know.
really talking about next year alone. We're talking about 3, 4,
I'm
5.
looking
and
30
beyond.
30 years down the road, you know, I think we still got some room for this winter, it doesn't have to be done today or tomorrow.
Right.
It doesn't have to be done the next year or the year after. We're not that big of a bind. We are gonna get you another school. But right now, me personally think that with the Camtech building that's located over there, it's probably early college building put over on the sideline, is take that out and put a 20 classroom building, then you can utilize part of this building right here. And we would have to do all this other stuff. And the taxpayers probably goes to that, a lot rather than would $49 million.
I think that's
Or
what it is.
$48 million.
That'll help here.
Take care of
That
that.
doesn't help our overcrowding at the other schools that he mentioned. I mean, that's another thing to consider. We are busting at seams at Grandview. The middle school is, you know, we can't even sit all the kids in the lunchroom now. We do have other problems that this would alleviate.
There's a lot of problems, being able to pay a loan back is a really big problem.
What was that one, sir?
I believe I was talking to, Mr. Heath.
Okay.
Okay.
That's what I'd heard.
Now, the capacity is 175 at the middle school lunchroom. And the last 8th grade class was pushing right there at the 175.
173. Didn't sit them all down.
So how do we pass it?
Y'all have any other questions?
It's right there at.
I have a question. Did the LGC have a recommendation of what they thought the county could handle as a tax?
They didn't,
I
they
mean,
don't
They came up
recommend,
with,
yeah,
they
they don't
say we
recommend.
could, this county effectively can afford 18.5 cents. Well, what's the threshold? What's the cutoff? line?
They're not gonna tell you, we're in a financially good position right now, because we have a very good fund balance, and we have low debt, as a county, comparable size compared to some of the surrounding counties. So we're in good shape. They're not going to tell you exactly what to go with. They're not gonna put themselves out there, but they'll tell you what they've seen in comparables and tell you this is probably a little excessive. You need to ratchet it down a little bit based on how much you want to borrow.
What do they tell you to ratchet it down?
But they didn't tell. I mean, they
You didn't
really
present
didn't.
them with multiple scenarios, or
No,
just
you
you gave
gave
them
them-
one 18?
You give one more. You just give
You
them
don't
one
get one
chance.
chance.
Well, you can come back. I mean, you could probably come back.
Why didn't you?
Why didn't I what? This
Why
is
didn't
not,
you give them?
that's not a formal request of them. That's, I'm just doing hypotheticals with them.
See, when they said no to that, though, you could like travel to the others.
Yes, well,
It's just like,
Y'all gave us a price that you want to build a school.
yes,
It's not up to us to keep coming back and say, that's where it'd been good to have a committee. You say, we bounce that figure, we run it by the school of government, see what is it gonna cost us? What do they say? Then we come back, we adjust it down again, come back with a new figure. But
well, why do you go to them with the most extreme borrowing term?
well, now, you know, y'all said you want $49. Well,
That's what you gave us.
We've been
We
against
give you a
that
number,
20-year
not a
plan
term.
the whole, I mean, the 20 years the whole time.
We presented the number, but we never.
That's what I'm saying. You presented the number.
Not the term.
Y'all presented the
Presented
20
it, LR.
That's up to us to try to finance it, but, you know, we're trying to put it out for taxpayers and we want to,
Well,
you know,
that's
we're
never
not against the
taxpayers.
school
18
at all,
cents
you know, we know you need space. We know you need it, but we don't want to kill taxpayers either. And you don't want to put the county in a
Yeah, I
position
don't want to kill myself either.
where for the next 20 years that the county, you know, it's growing, there's going to be needs. So, you know, you've got to remember that. And if we do another school, once that's completed, we're going to have another tax increase because you're going to have to staff it. You're going to have a higher budget. So we know that, and you know that. I mean, so you got to allow room for that. So you don't want to.
Yeah, we do. We're not idiots, sir. We're not
We got to
stupid.
think about it.
And Zena did nothing, Chris.
This
I've
was
seen
about
no
the
proposal
project.
from y'all talking about additional costs for operation of a facility.
As he just said, this project was for building the school, outfitting the school, FFEs for the school. If our grades grow
So we got.
and we get reduced down by the staff that the
Wait,
state requires,
discuss it
we gotta have more
further.
teachers anyway.
Not make a decision tonight,
Well, that's your,
and,
just keep it
is
down.
that what y'all wanna do? We can discuss it again at our
Mr. Bowman, can I ask
June
a
meeting.
question?
Yes.
So we have the $12 million from the state, right? And we can go up to $10 million without a bond referendum, correct?
You can do a local, by local government, local obligation on there, right, the law. The commissioners could do that themselves without any referendum,
Up to 10 million.
20.
whatever the number.
I thought it was 20.
You can go a higher number,
We can go a higher number.
yes.
So we can keep it lower than 49.3.
Oh, yeah, well,
And we can make additions to the present schools and make a new sports facility.
well, I'm sure, again, and I'll defer to,
But you got here with this 12.
on the 12.3 million, whether that grant, can, I don't know under these circumstances now with pandemic and all that, if they're gonna be flexible to let us use it in a different, scenario other than just building a brand new high school. So if they're gonna allow us to build something, then maybe we could use that and then put it toward it just on a local obligation bond and not go to a referendum. You don't necessarily have to go to a referendum to get this, because y'all, the 5 of you, have that authority to be able to sign off on that.
We don't have any guidance or any information at this time that the guidelines for the grants are gonna change. We've been told pretty strictly that it cannot be used for anything, and at least as of now, cannot be used for anything other than the project for which it was supplied.
I mean, we can check on that, and certainly you and I will check on that to get it answering that question.
Y'all wanna put this on the June, 1, and we'll discuss it at that time? Like,
Do you think you can have an answer?
Oh, look, tomorrow's Friday.
Yeah.
what y'all
So I
want
don't know.
Nobody
we got-
else in that.
Mr. Ox, how far, if they wait until June 1st, how far is that gonna push this timeline back?
Well, there's some work obviously that without an answer tonight, then we need to have information prepared to go out in the council's packet. We need to get the first reading drawn up, working with bond council. That's a pretty quick document to be done. But in absence of having first reading on June 1st, it would likely result in a called meeting by council sometime between the first reading and the second reading. Between the meeting in June, the meeting in July. The issue that we run into is that we have to meet the advertisement deadlines in the newspaper that basically are the limiting factor. I mean, you folks could meet 1, 2, and 3 days if you needed to, but we have to make those advertisements and they have a certain period between. In the absence of at least going through third reading, then you basically are tying the county's hands in the future as to how you pay for this project. You eliminate the option of having a bond referendum, at least for this year and probably to 2022. Then you have to start weighing the impact of inflation, possibly losing your grant, and interest rates going up. You don't have to make, excuse me, I'm sorry, just one quick final thought. You have up to third reading to make the final decision on either the amount or whether or not you pass the third reading. And so that gives you at least another 45 days to answer any questions you might have. It's not going to cost the taxpayers any significant amount of money to have the first and second reading drawn up or to run those ads in the newspapers. And it's only until you get to the third reading in July that you formalize whether it goes on the ballot or not. You may choose to go to USDA route. I mean, that's 10 cents versus 18.5 cents on the tax rate. And that may give Mr. Bowman that ability to have some flexibility for other projects. But again, we need to go to local government commission to run both of those scenarios by them, and then bring that information back to the commission by the time you have that third reading, when you can make an informed decision. Without starting the process in early June, then you essentially tied your hands to any future option.
They, of course, you went from 49.3 to 45.3. Can you get that 45.3 down?
Well,
I mean, I'm just asking,
He's
can you
buying
get
a
that
car.
number down? So we know pretty quickly, so we know before June 1, by Monday, so when we talk, we know what we're talking about.
okay, that's a good question.
I mean, that would maybe make a difference.
That's a very good question. If you don't mind, I'm going to go back to that slide because I think it's important.
It's not easy to say.
Here we go.
Not by any means does anyone think this is easy. You're talking 40 million plus dollars. Nobody thinks
So
it's
you can
easy.
see, we're just not gonna.
I mean, if you could get that down.
None of us
to
are
where it's
standing here asking
going to be-
And nobody's putting the real.
Our taxpayers, all you
gotta do is get the voters.
We're gonna have a lot bigger population. We're gonna pay the down.
It doesn't sound like it.
You know, cut that cost, get that, get this tax rate down, where it doesn't kill everybody, or put the county in a bad position. That might be livable and use the grant, anyway.
Let me answer the question for you because that's a really good one. The first is, as you recall, Mr. Cheatwood, during the retreat, council retreat, where he went over a number of these scenarios, he said you can basically put any number you want to in the first and second reading, but you have to have the final number by third reading. He said if you put a number at first reading, you could not go up on the final reading, but you could go down. And so my advice in that particular case is you put I hate to use the term plug number in your first and second reading, but then you finalize your actual amount on the third reading. Now, to answer your specific question, can the project be reduced?
Right.
Well, if you look at how we got to the 45 million, one of the things we did was remove the auditorium, which is really a community type of space. But we added back 2 million for the auxiliary gym that the board had already moved. So that's $2 million there if you chose not to add back the auxiliary gym. There's another $1 million that we have set aside in owner contingency. That's $3 million right there that could come off the 45 if you were pressed to.
Well, I think everybody, not me, I know you can start out high and you drop down to lower numbers, but I like starting pretty close to where you think it's going to be from the beginning. And I know you've got to have a little fun for it in case something goes wrong, but right now it's kind of high. I mean, but I'd like to see that number come down, and I think it would make everybody here feel better. And then we know that it's not going to go up. We have some reassurance it can't go any higher than that. And then you take the 12 million plus grant out, then it gives us a better idea of where we stand and what the tax rate's going to be. If it's better, that's wonderful. But I think that would make everybody here feel better. That's just my.
Well, it would certainly, you can see the difference in lowering 3 million. You can do the math off of this sheet. It makes a pretty substantial difference.
Right.
The other is the actual interest rate itself. If you remember, for every 1% in extra interest rates, it's about 4.4 million in repayment. And you're essentially in these scenarios, you're padding your numbers by 1% interest. We're selling bonds now at 2% or less, and you're using at least 3% here, which pads the numbers. So the numbers are already better than what you're projecting. This is conservative, and that's what Mr. Cheatwood's job is to be, conservative.
Right.
But a realistic approach selling in today's market, you're going to get at least 30% less cost and interest than you have currently. So that's part of it. And I think if you couple that with maybe a couple of other reductions, you're certainly going to be under the 33, probably in the $30 million range. And your tax impact If you lose, you look at different terms, and you can do 25-year GO bonds as well as you can do 30-year USDA loans. But ultimately, knowing where that sweet spot is let us take that number to LGC, come back with you, look at it. And I agree, a 10-cent increase on taxes is a substantial difference than 18 for virtually the same project. You're just looking at how you borrow the money a little different. And LGC would have to approve both of those. So my approach would be start the process. Don't tie your hands now. And then you have the next 45 days to get any questions answered that you want and look at all of the numbers. And we can do that working with Mr. Cheatwood and your bond counsel. And then by third reading, you'll be able to make an informed decision as to whether or not you want to ask the voters to decide or not.
Any questions from anyone? No, sir. Not a question.
I got one more for you.
Yes, sir.
How long will this school last us?
Well, if you're looking at a 60 to 70 year bill.
Say that again?
A 60 to 70 year bill.
That was how we like. My renovation.
Now, one of the things that I will mention in the study that we did, we looked at a lot of different options. If you recall, we have that information we can provide everyone. But every option other than the construction of a new high school resulted in you spending even more money in 10 to 15 years based on your population growth. The one solution that solved all of your problems across the entire district was the construction of a new high school. You don't not use this building. This building will then be converted to a middle school, which gives you growth there. You've already got some significant problems at the primary and elementary schools. So
What do we do with the current middle school?
current middle school would be converted to other uses. I think
Probably, I think the plan was the intermediate school to take the pressure off of Grandy's campus. We tossed around a few ideas.
So there's 2 points he made, Mr. Chairman. I'm gonna wait.
I'm sorry, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
There's 2 points that he made that made a little bit of something different in my mind. If we put $49.3 million on the first read, and we read it, and we take these 45 days, and we do some aggressive research, and quit BSing around with this, because we messed with this thing for 11 years. I don't know how much more, but 11 years. We've been trying to get a school financing built in this county. And do some really aggressive research in these 45 days. If we get to that third reading and we think we're wrong, we can say, no, we're not gonna do anything. Or we can say, we have to back up and regroup and only build this much. But one of the scenarios we have is, go back to this thing with a committee. In that committee, we've done that. Me and Kristen sat on the same committee one time for a year and a half. And we got to the point that we knew we needed it, and we knew we had to find the money to do it. But that's as far as we got. So we're already behind. I think if we start cutting, like the chairman said, we start cutting out, all we're doing is building something we're gonna work on 5 or 6 years later. If we cut anything, it should not be classroom spaces.
Well, if you look at those two.
The impact of the north end in the 10 to 15 year window is about 400 kids. Is that what you guys told us one time? I looked at one of the presentations and it said that as Camden Plantation built out and what's the other one called? South Mills Landing. As those build out, we can expect about 400 students.
I believe that was the estimate that came from planning at the county level using their formula.
But here's the real easy math, Chris. We got 10,000 people in this county, and you got almost 2,000 of them in classrooms, right? if the population in this county goes to 50, we're gonna gain another 1,000 kids, right? I mean,
Could.
yeah. That's kind of the
Absolutely.
worst
Nothing
case
set in
scenario.
stone, But yes,
But housing, if I'm correct in some of the reading and research I've done in the last 2 or 3 weeks, there's an awful lot of people in these big cities that's gonna wanna move to rural North Carolina. We've got an email from some guy who wants to make sure we're gonna put internet and. But that is coming because the pressure to get out of those urban areas is coming this way.
Clay, I would remind you though, they will not move to a county that has a 9% tax rate, when the neighboring county has a 48.
I understand that, so. You can't compare us. We don't have that.
I'm just
trying to figure
letting
out
you
some way to do this.
We'll be splitting our own growth, human growth also.
Yeah.
Because they
But
won't.
you're using
move
that
here.
worst case number two. Well, none of us want 18 cents. No one supports, nobody in this room supports 18 cents.
I'm throwing a number out because we're gonna be on the hook for it one way or the other, and I'm just throwing the 18 cents out. Okay, it's actually 18.5, but if you want to throw 15 cents out, 15 cents is excessive
Like
for
10.
a county our size.
10 is what we gotta get.
10 cents we might be able to work with.
Well, what I
But I'm
would,
not, I can't tie the hands of the county and future commissioners to fire, sheriff, infrastructure, water, sewer for a new high school. We won't be able to touch anything for 20 years.
Nobody's
So why
asking
even
you to
have
do that.
commissioners?
We're asking for
happen.
a 10-cent option to put to the public and let them decide.
A 10-cent option, we're good. I
Yeah,
think I'm
if you,
good with
That's
if
what
you
we're
do,
asking.
if you do the
10
scenario
cents
five,
a pass, but you can't build this school for 10
10
cents.
cents.
You
but
just
if you
give
do,
us an option.
if you do scenario five,
No,
Which is it gonna
it's
happen?
about 30-year
If you
loans.
do- if you do a 30-year loan, you're at 10.4%. Look, if you do scenario five, just listen 1 minute. If you do scenario five, going by his numbers,
Yes.
okay, and that's, with the grant. And that's the 45.3. Of course, he's saying he might can cut 4 million or so out of that, which would bring that 33 down even more, but that might put you 10 to 9%.
Yes.
And 30, I mean, I wouldn't want to go 40 years. So 30 years is a happy medium.
Agreed.
You finance a house for 30 years. I mean, we're talking about a school. That would not kill the county, nor kill people so bad on taxes.
that's
So
more
that would put you around, I think people would vote for that.
Mr. Chair.
I think
That's
that's reason
reasonable.
what we're looking for is, can we get the first and second reading, take these 45 days and work it out? And if it all comes down to the final reading and we're still at 18 point something cents, I'm not gonna vote for it. I can tell you as a voter, I'm not voting for 18 cents.
Well, not even, I just.
But if we get down to the third reading and we've cut stuff on our side, y'all found better interest rates, we've compromised on terms, and we're in that 9 to 11.5 cent window where it is feasible. If we don't start it now, we're not gonna meet the deadline to have it done until 2022.
I think we should aim, like Tom said, just aim for scenario 5. That's 10 cents. Is that on?
And if you made, I mean, you can live without these other little items, that's not cutting classroom space.
No.
And that would bring it down, that would put it below the 10 cent, based on these numbers.
Yes.
That would be little. I mean, look, 10 years down the road or whatever, the population will be up, our tax base is gonna be better.
Always have the
We can
option to
always-
take it down.
And the school's gonna be built where you can add on without a lot of big issues. But the basic stuff would be there, you would have it, and, you'd have a classroom facility, and you can make use of the other schools. So to me, that works.
Mr. Chair, I can answer that question for you. First, these numbers that we're using come directly from the county's financial advisor, Mr. Cheatwood. The second is, if you look at scenario 5, which is 10 cents on the $45 million project, I just identified $3 million that it'd be hard to live without, especially if you're going to school. But that really brings down scenario 8. So you see the difference in the borrowed money is 33 to 30. So it would effectively make a difference of 1.3 cents on the tax rate. So then the question is, is having the auxiliary gym and some of these other things worth that extra penny, because that's the difference that it would make.
You know, I think, and then, you know,
Yes, sir.
like I say, you know, when you get another school's built, there's gonna have to be another increase. I mean, because you're gonna have to have more staff. I mean, you can't staff all these schools that you currently have and a new school.
We're gonna require that.
Even if we had turn enrollment growth, we can have 20 trailers out here, we still got staff.
I mean, with enrollment growth, we
But you know,
have staff.
you know what I'm saying, you're gonna have maintenance, you're gonna have utilities. So
You're gonna staff and utilities,
So
everything.
anyway, there's probably gonna have to be a tax increase to cover that. So this gives you some room to where it doesn't kill everybody, and also the county can do other projects, because, you know, the more people move in the county, the more water we gotta supply them, the more wells we gotta have, the more treatment systems, you know, everything keeps going up.
And while we're talking about the pandemic, we can also remember that our kids at the early college, high school don't even have a bathroom where they can wash their hands.
When you do a nice facility over there, with 20 classrooms in, a whole lot of open spaces. Be sure
I don't
you
wanna
put a
hear it,
bathroom
like,
in
this
there
is
for
here and
dress
now,
back.
and they don't even have a
Doesn't make
restroom or
any
a
sense.
place they
The
can.
feasibility study that y'all wanted.
County sewage over space, and we'll have that worked out.
Just the,
They don't,
They-
Ross.
I
They don't have a
don't,
place they can wash their hands in the
do
school.
they have, hand sanitizer? Is that what-
Good luck getting it, because we can't even get it in the medical facility.
If they need it for next year, they'll contact,
We'll get it.
emergency management.
We have
Christie,
contacted emergency.
And she has stuff she doesn't have, so she can help
It'll be gone.
with the school.
Mr. Chair. I'm ready to propose a motion.
Okay.
And my motion would be to organize a committee with representatives from both of these boards to study this project promptly and diligently. For the possibility of, I know they want it on it right now, but for the possibility of at least getting it on the 2022.
Okay.
That's my motion.
Okay. Y'all heard the motion.
Which, not this year's,
You saying
2022.
2022, yes, sir. Commissioner.
Any discussion?
I think we should be part of it. When he was designing the building and stuff, we were part of that design situation. When a lot of open spaces, not a whole lot of classroom space. I like to see more classroom space.
If we put this off, you realize we're gonna lose this grant. So-
Rick, can you talk about why there was a lot of open spaces in that building?
He talks about it, that he said the kids need to have open space.
You know that, lose that grant, which would be not good. Any discussion on the motion?
Mr. Wright, for our side, what would be the impact if we put it off 2 more years on?
Well, the part of the impact that I can absolutely guarantee you is construction cost is gonna increase probably $45 million. That's a given. And that is historical data for the last 50 years. It could be higher. The second is, I honestly cannot conceive of a way that interest rates do not increase in the next 2.5 years. I just cannot see that happening. So you'll be increasing the cost of the project without increasing anything that the taxpayers or the school gets. You'll probably be increasing the cost of that project somewhere around $10 to $15 million. And if you go back and look at the studies you've had in the past, but you've been studying this project for a long time, the cost has gone up, up, and up. And it's not because you've gotten any bigger facility. You know, you're right now at the minimum standards that North Carolina recommends for a school this size. Right now, you have the opportunity to take advantage of low interest rates and a $12 million grant. You also have the potential of getting some additional state monies that might come through, again, that would lower the cost or maybe allow you to add back some of these other features. So I don't see, even if you put it off, where you're going to end up with a tax impact that's going to be less than 10 cents. I just don't see any way that you can make that math work out by delay.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Any discussion?
Can I ask you to table this motion, Commissioner Meggs? I mean, we do have 2 readings, correct? before we have to make our final decision.
Yeah,
Or two before.
two to
If
get
we
it
can
down
get
to
it
the
down
final.
to 10 cents. Just hear me out, right? And if it doesn't get down to 10 cent, to about 10 cent tax increase, right, we can nix it at the third reading. We can call it at the third reading.
I hear you, Commissioner, but
Okay.
my thought on it is this. If we form that committee with people from both of these boards, then we will know promptly what's going on. And what's
Still
going
have
on.
We still have our committee, and we can still work
Yeah.
together. And we can go through the two readings, see where it goes, right? And if it's at the 10 cent mark, which is doable to me, to put it to a referendum, 18 cents is not, right? But if we can get it down, and then we can put it, let the voters vote on it.
I got a compromise with what you just said.
Compromise the
I
compromise?
got a motion.
He's got the motion on the floor.
Let's go
We got a
forward.
motion on the floor. Let's vote on that motion. And then we can do a separate motion to put the three readings out there and make the final decision on July 1st.
Well, that's the way, that doesn't make sense. We just, that's what we're gonna do.
You're not killing the.
All right, look, we got a motion on the floor. Y'all through discussing. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, all opposed to the motion, say no.
No,
No. Clayton,
I was aye.
you were aye. So we got myself, you.
I wanna hear the reading.
The motion
You have a chance
passed.
to say no.
Mr. Chairman, may I pull the board? I just need to make sure.
Yeah, pull the board, please. Yeah.
All right, Commissioner Monroe,
No.
Commissioner Craniac,
Yes.
Commissioner Meggs,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Briggs,
Yes.
and Chairman White.
No.
No?
Okay, so the motion passes.
Alright.
Okay.
Now, is there any rule that says we can't make those three readings while this committee is trying to work?
You could do that.
Motion to put in 2 times 20 pound, not the 2
I
times.
understand what you're saying.
Read his motion again, let's make sure. Read his motion again.
The motion is to organize a committee with representatives from both boards to study this project promptly and diligently for the 2022 ballot.
2022.
But he's saying to put it on 2022.
2022. So he's
So you
extending
can't-
anything further, and it's not gonna have the two readings.
So you
And
can't
it
do that.
needs to get on the November ballot. And
So you
that's,
can't do that.
and we already voted.
So that's it.
I think it's small. That's fine. I like it. Give it, take care.
All right. So there you go. That's it.
Thank you for your hard work, Mr. Rock. Entertain a motion to adjourn. the-
Motion adjourned.
Adjourn by
We still have some.
yourself.
Don't believe her, we still have some.
Seconded by Mr. Heaton. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries.
Folks, have a good night.
Thanks, Rick.
Yes. It's supposed to be. I won't be just talking.
Yeah, they said it'd be just a couple of minutes.
Last year's last
You need to go with him because it's prepping his lunch. Yes, exactly.
All right, so, okay, you ready? Everybody straight. Okay, we're gonna go with the CARES Act Fund Distribution Plan. So, County Manager.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So in your packet, I've placed the plans, and these are just draft at this point. I'll go through these with you, but just as a reminder, We recently got notification that the Camden County portion of the relief funds is gonna be $426,810. We're supposed to submit a plan by the 1st of June as to how we're going to allocate these funds. I'll go over these briefly. These are not set in stone, and the numbers are not set in stone. These are just on there for right now to send in so we can actually access the funds. We have to do this or we don't get the funds. So that being said, I'm looking at hiring a part-time administrator for the program, the entire program. It runs from 1 June through 31 December. Also, a part-time staff custodian to keep the common areas clean and sanitized. That'll be their only job. They'll work through all of the county buildings. Order and stockpile the PPE, personal protective equipment. Plexiglass shields.
Could I
Yes,
ask
sir,
that
go ahead.
you add a ton of hand sanitizer?
Yes, sir.
For the early college.
Yes, we'll certainly do that. And that's not to say that the school didn't get some, the school also got some.
Yeah, but I don't want to hear, that you don't have hand sanitizer.
Not just
School, but enough for us and the school.
for the world.
Let's put ourselves in hand sanitizer.
All right, so also, we're looking at putting plexiglass shields for social distancing in common areas where people meet, such as the library, DSS, the courtroom. Evaluating modifications to building ventilation systems. We're going to have those inspected and if we can get those cleaned out. Modifying entrances to buildings, so maybe looking at putting some kind of lobby and the doors that just open from the outside into the office, maybe put in a lobby space. So it's a whole That's right.
I hold a lot of it, just feel like they're fine. And I breathe back here.
So we'll do that. We'll do that analysis on that. Funding for additional meetings, hardware such as laptops, monitors, cameras, and microphones. Meeting, these owls are these new technology where they set up the conference table and they rotate the person that's speaking. Small business and nonprofit relief grant program for local businesses impacted by COVID-19 pandemic. The Board of Commissioners will ask you to authorize and create a grant program. I put in that amount there at $50,000. I'm not sure yet if that'll go up. I'm not sure the amount to the business. That's something that I'll present to you. You can modify that when I present. Emergency management, I'm looking at giving those folks over there some money because they've been very good, very active during this whole thing. That'll be our contribution. Pastor Tank's going to do the same thing. Camden Schools technology piece. I'm looking at putting about $50,000 into that fund for the schools.
That's to try to buy Chromebooks and stuff to support remote education as we had to do.
That's right. As I said earlier, the plan is required to be submitted by June 1st, 2020. All funds will be managed by a program manager to be hired out of these funds. So these funds will not come out of our general fund, but out of these funds. This program will be monitored on a regular basis and funds will be allocated using a request form with justification. Any unspent funds on December 31st, 2020 will be returned. Okay, so we've tried to allocate all this and hopefully we'll be done. So that's basically in a nutshell what this is. It's to get your approval for this so I can actually send something.
Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
I make the motion that we authorize county manager to move forward with COVID-19 fund. Relief funds, I've said it backwards.
Okay,
Sorry.
Can you see if this motion works for you? They make a motion to approve the plans for COVID-19 relief funds as presented by the county manager and authorize him to sign the CRF county plan for submission to the state. Do you agree with that?
Ain't that what I just said, Mr. Chairman? He just didn't listen to all of it. I make a motion that we approve a plan for COVID-19 relief fund as presented by the county manager and authorize him to sign the CRF county plan for submission to the state.
Okay, we have a motion. Any discussion?
We were discussing, he said something about small businesses, $50,000, you might have to go over that.
That's okay.
So there's a lot of businesses now in the area and stuff like that, they will be out back on that business because of it, and it may be supported to help them get back on. I don't know if you're gonna do a pool, drop out county, and ask you what, were you impacted, and what was the impact? Could you tell?
We're going to do a number of things. We're going to actually put it on social media. We'll actually, this person that we'll bring onto Monterey will actually get on the ground and go visit. And so, and show them what form needs to fill. We're going to make it very simple. One-page form.
But that figure could go up.
It could. It's all, it's dependent on y'all and how much you.
And that's still on figure 50.
And this is how much your impact on you find out.
Well, we're going to limit it. I mean, it's limited. You can't just go out.
You wanna spread it out.
You can't take the money.
Well, that's the city did it with, I think, 1,500 business regardless of the size.
Telling you gotta be running a business, they're not a nonprofit.
Yeah, it's gotta be made.
We're just talking about.
Any other discussion?
That's all I have on that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we have a motion. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Anything else? Okay, we need a motion to adjourn. We have a motion to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we now adjourn.
Stephanie, are they done? Did they just sign?
They just.
Hold on one second.